Thanks to be here for this talk. Yeah, I cannot do the talk in Turkish, unfortunately. Thanks to be here. I'm Nicolas, Frankel, developer, advocate. Nobody cares about that anyway. So, your first API. Who has ever developed an HTTP API here? Okay, oh, not that many, okay. So that will be useful for people who never did and who will do, but probably they will be useful also for people who did and had some concerns. In general, when you try to design your first HTTP API, you are very focused on the model, on the modeling of your system or of your entities. Then the next complexity layer is to implement all the REST or RESTful or however you want to call them semantics. Oh, this is like a read, so I should use a get. Oh, but it's a get, but I should pass a body, but get doesn't allow body, this kind of stuff. So you're much focused on your project and how to make it successful. And in general, you forget about all the rest. And one of the problems is like how you could have a V2. So when your business comes to you and say, hey, we should have a V2, that's probably your reaction. Because you didn't think about it, and doing it like as an afterthought is going to be a mess. So my idea for this talk is to give you some tips and tricks so that it makes it easier. So you have your service, and here I will call it an upstream, and the reason for that is I will be using the semantics of Apache APISIX, but it can be anything. This is generally what you do when you have a REST API, correct? Of course, this is a trick question. That's not correct. In general, you have something in between, and my solution for that is a lot of it will be easier if you introduce an API gateway. But most of you already have something in between, and you call it a reverse proxy. That's the real stuff, correct? So I'm telling you, this is what you should do, and you tell me, this is what we have. So what's the difference between an API gateway and a reverse proxy? Anybody knows about it? Good, then I can do my slides. I'm quite old, or on the positive side, I'm quite experienced. So I started doing internet like more than 20 years ago. Who is older than me? Chucky. At least I'm not the oldest in the room.
Thanks.
And so the thing is, at that time, internet was pretty simple, and not internet, but the web itself. When I created my web page, and it was just HTML, some images, because it was super nice at the time. I put audio file, MIDI files, crazy. That's from a user experience, it's terrible, but it was possible, so I did it. And no CSS, and no JavaScript. That was the good life then, huh? Who loves JavaScript? All right, don't be shy, come on. I see people saying, oh, okay. Okay. Sorry?
TypeScript, maybe.
TypeScript, yeah, TypeScript is good. It's typed, as the name implies, yeah. You know, if you love JavaScript, it's like Stockholm Syndrome, but that's fine. Actually, I used this like magnificent piece of software called Hotdog Pro. Do you know about Hotdog Pro? Really amazing.
Same thing, actually.
Wow.
HTML.
Yeah, exactly. So the good thing about Hotdog Pro, that was the highest form of software at the time. You had this like stuff, and you could choose which tag you could put. So it just allowed you not to write the tag. You just clicked on, like, let's say, strong. Or at the time it was not strong, it was B for bold, and it inserted a B-like tag. And of course, it didn't auto-close. You had to remember to click the like /B tag. Amazing piece of software. I'm happy that, we really are old. Anyway, at the time, for me that was magical. I just put my files in a folder, and somehow magically they would be rendered over the internet. So afterwards, I realized there was something called a web server, and at the time, actually, the web server had one single responsibility. That was to serve static content. HTML files, static file, audio file, static file, image file, static file. And so people started to get frustrated. Most of the time, the web server at the time was the Apache web server. And Apache web server mainly could do like some tricks. One of the tricks was to write a CGI script in Perl that would generate the HTML file. So basically, you had like one programming language to generate HTML. Probably you have done it somehow in one way or another. You understand it's not really super useful. It's hard to like get it right on the first time. It's hard to maintain. So somebody decided, oh, I want to have something dynamic, but also much more like useful, much more like developer friendly. And they invented PHP. With PHP, you just write your HTML, and then you add the tags that you want to have dynamic. Who knows what PHP stands for? Not you, because you probably know the answer. Yes?
Personal homepage.
Personal homepage, yeah. So now the PHP developers say, hey, it's hypertext preprocessor because it looks cool. But actually, that was done for personal homepages. Any PHP developer in the room? Yeah. Hey, don't worry, that's fine. That's fine. I have nothing against PHP. You just have to know that it started as a personal project. And then the web started to get like more and more widespread. And like companies started to use the web. They didn't see it as a toy anymore. They wanted to start communicating over the web. They started to make the web part of their strategy. And what they did is start to invest. And when you have like a web page, a site that is part of your strategy, you don't want it to be down. You want it to be reliable. And in that case, they started to add more nodes. So the web server, which serves static content, there was another layer of web server that didn't serve anything. It was just to have some load balancing and redundancy. So we added more features to the web server. And now it grew and grew and grew and grew so much that actually we had different sites or even apps that needed to be served. So most of them were now dynamic. And so because in the previous incarnation, all the nodes were the same, now the nodes were different. They served different content. And so the first layer of the web server starting to do routing. So depending on the domain, depending on some parameter, you would route the request to a different cluster. And so this is the evolution of the web server, actually. The first step was to serve static content. Then we started to serve dynamic content. Then we started to do load balancing. Then we did routing. So we stuffed more and more responsibility on the web server. And actually, when you have those two layers, when you have this single point of entry, if you are an architect, you probably think, hey, it's a good entry point to put even more stuff, such as authentication or authorization or caching or IP blocking or anything of the sort. And now your web servers has a lot and lot of responsibilities completely beside just serving static content. And now we are in a world where the web is ubiquitous, where we need to exchange information not only inside our own information system, but across several heterogeneous information systems. In the good old days, which were not so good to be honest, the idea for integration of data was you would put a file in an FTP folder, then you would have a batch regularly reading this folder and then treats the file and rename it when the batch was done. Who did it? Who did this kind of stuff? Who still do this kind of stuff? Yeah, I'm sorry. And so if you want to go behind that, if you want to have like Mary said it before, if you have to have integration that is more reliable, that is more real time, you cannot rely on batch anymore. You have to have some synchronous communication. And across heterogeneous system, like imagine I have a Java stack and you have a .NET stack. The only thing you can rely on is the most basic of bricks is HTTP. And so it makes a lot of sense to integrate stuff with HTTP nowadays. And that's the reason for APIs. APIs are actually the glue that binds the web together. And in the age of APIs, the reverse proxy needs to have additional responsibility, even more than before. And now we don't call it a reverse proxy anymore, it's called an API gateway, because reverse proxy, for example, cannot handle or can hardly handle such very basic stuff. One of the most basic stuff, in the normal reverse proxy, you have rate limiting, because you want to avoid like bad actors to DDoS your information system. But in an API gateway, you want to have rate limiting not to prevent DDoS. Well, you still want to have that, but you want to have rate limiting based on, let's say, the sum of money that somebody pays you. If somebody pays you like basic stuff, like you have a certain rate, then you can have like premium access for above rates. Thing is, you can do it with a reverse proxy. You can hack the Nginx server, you can write your module in C, and probably do that. The thing is, these kind of business rules, they tend to be very, like, let's say, fluid. They might change from day one to day two. And so if you do it with Nginx, you will need to, like, recompile the module with Nginx. You will need to redeploy, which means you will need to switch it off and on again, which is not what you want when you have a single point or entry point. Billing is another issue that you didn't have before, and you probably want to bill people based on their consumption, for example. So this is the kind of like concerns that an API gateway provides you with that reverse proxy cannot. There are a couple of API gateways on the market. I work on the Apache APISIX project myself. But there are others, probably you know about Kong, about lots of others. There are also like cloud-based one. I won't talk about cloud-based one because I believe that they are they provide vendor lock-ins. If you use one, then you are stuck on this vendor. But any of these you can install by yourself, manage by yourself, and then switch if they don't fit your requirements. Couple of slides about Apache APISIX, because I work on the project. It was donated recently, 3 years ago, to the Apache Foundation. It becomes a top-level project in 2020. And the architecture, perhaps who knows about Apache APISIX, by the way? Great, that's cool. Now everybody does. So it's based on the Nginx server as well, but on top of that you have a Lua engine. And so you have a couple of out-of-the-box plugins that are written in Lua. And if you want to write a new one, it's very easy. So as I mentioned, first step in my solution is to introduce an API gateway finally. So I will go through a demo. And let's see if I do that. No, it doesn't work, so I need to stop the slides and write this. So I have an old API and a new API. So the old API is a Spring Boot application written in Java. And as you can see, I'm a it's perhaps a bit small. Better like this? Can the people in the back see that? Good. You are young, I couldn't. So here you have like this stupid hello world controller that probably says hello world. So if you just go at the root, it says hello world. Otherwise, it says hello whoever you passed on the path. And this is bad because it's written with Spring Boot annotation and it's written in Java. So the new version is much better. It's in Kotlin. and I only have one single application, one single annotation. This is obviously much better, right? I have improved my hello world. So the idea, come on. Oh, you didn't understand I was joking. Because when I talk like that, I'm very serious, but I do jokes all the time, so you need to catch them. So the idea is now I need to deploy everything, and I want to like go from V1 to V2 without breaking too much stuff. So I will like deploy everything. I will use Docker Compose because it's the easiest for a demo. Probably you shouldn't use it in production, but that's my personal opinion. So the first thing that I deploy is Apache APISIX. APISIX stores its configuration in etcd. Who knows about etcd, by the way? Oh, one person. Okay, so basically etcd is this like key value store that is used internally by Kubernetes. So if you, it's a good storage for distributed configuration by default, so I will need to deploy it. Then I will deploy the Apache dashboard because we have a GUI on top of it. And then I will do some monitoring with Prometheus and Grafana. Then I will deploy my two services. Obviously, normally, I would only deploy the first one, and then afterwards the second one, but I deploy everything. And let's do it. So Docker Compose up. And it takes a couple of seconds because I have a super cool new MacBook Pro. No, that's not bad. And so now I can start to curl. So let's curl my, like directly without the Apache, the API gateway, localhost 8081/hello. It works. Let's say hello all2. So sorry, I don't have the letter, so I would say halturk. It's wrong, but anyway. And because I just want to show you how good I am, yes. So everything works as expected. And now, as I mentioned, my idea is to start using the API gateway. So I will use the port of the API gateway. And I expect the same thing to happen. And it tells me, hey, route not found. The reason for that is that I didn't configure the API gateway now. So I need to say, hey, when something like starts with whatever, I need to direct it to this like upstream. So for that, I have a REST call. So here, everything will be on GitHub because I don't want you to install anything. I want to curl, but without you installing the curl command line. So I will use the Docker curl image, and because it's an external Docker run, I need to run on the same network. So here I need to pass the network. So that's for the implementation detail. For the rest, I will curl. I will use, as you can see, a dedicated like route. So basically, you can configure Apache APISIX with a REST API itself. Because it's actually a very sensitive operation, I need to like pass in some API key. Here I'm using the default, which is good for a demo. Probably you need to change it. And here is the payload. So here I pass a name. It's optional, but it's good because then I can understand what I did. Then I can pass the methods. Then I can pass the URI. And here I pass the upstream. Upstream normally would be a cluster of nodes that do the same, that provide the same capabilities. Here I will have one single node, again, because it's a demo. In general, when you have a cluster, you need to tell it the type of algorithm you will send the request to. Here, it's not important. I use round robin, and I set it a weight of 1. Again, one single node, completely useless. And I will monitor it using the Prometheus plugin. So if I run this stuff, and I curl again, now it works. So now I'm going through the API gateway, and I'm just forwarding it to the correct upstream. I didn't change anything. I'm just introducing the API gateway, so we need to move a bit further to be interesting. At the moment, I have an unversioned endpoint, and I want to introduce a V2. There are multiple ways to actually version a REST API or an HTTP API. One easy way is through the path. This is what I will be using here because it's the easiest and most visible one. You can use also headers, or you can use query parameters. Everything is supported on APISIX, but here the path is the easiest one. So I will introduce a V1 path. We can do the same as before, introducing a new route, but let's say that I want to have a better modeling. And Apache APISIX allows you to model some stuff that can be actually reused. For example, we can have a dedicated upstream. In that case, I use another route, the upstreams route, to create a new upstream. So I will create the upstream, and then I can create the plugin configuration. Here at this time, it's only Prometheus. And then finally, what I can do is I create the version route, so with v1/hello, with the upstream ID that I created before, and the plugin config ID that I created before. The only thing that I need to do is first to change the plugin configuration. The reason for that is that if I just forward v1/hello to the upstream will receive v1/hello. And it doesn't understand v1 something, it only understands /hello. So I need to remove the v1 prefix first, and then forward it. For this reason, I have this plugin called Proxy Rewrite, based on a URL, and basically it just tells, if it starts with v1 something, well, just forward something. So we can now try it. Up here, and say v1. And hey, v1. Yes, thanks. And it works. Let's see it from another point of view, which basically will be on the dashboard. And if I remember well, I always mistake it, but no, it's the right one. So I want to set the routes here. It's admin because demo, but of course you shouldn't do it. And here we can see through the dashboard the two routes that I created. Here the path, and here what you can do, you can configure it, or you can directly view the JSON, directly change the JSON. Everything works. We can also see the upstream that I created before, stuff to the new API. So now we have two routes. One that directly goes to the upstream, and one that is the version route. So it's good, but what happens at this point, if you have two routes, there is a chance that people will keep using the first one, and we want people to start to use the versioned one. So it's time to say to our users, folks, you cannot use this route anymore. But we don't know our users, because we didn't have time to think about making them register whatever. So we will fall back to the default HTTP stuff, saying, hey, when people are using the unversion route, we tell them 301, and please use the second route. Make sense? Good. So let's do it. And again, so it's like the old iPhone advertisement. There is a plugin for everything. Before it was an app for everything, now there is a plugin. We can say on the first route, so the unversion route, remember, we can say we will redirect, and we will say, hey, you should use this v1 stuff. So this is the original path. We will prefix it with v1, and then we will return this 301 and asking people to use it. At this point, there are two ways. Nope, I will get it right. Yes, A. Either the people are following automatically, and with curl it's -l, and so, so I will use the unversion routes, and so if they are automatically redirected on their client, everything works as expected. If they are not automatically redirected, then probably something like this happens. They will say, hey, it's a 301, move permanently, and you will have the new location in the header. So if it also works if we say all2. So if you are the client yourself, I hope you are monitoring your calls, because at some point you will see a lot of errors. Then you can check the response, and you will need to change your code accordingly. Okay? Now, the problem of all of this is because we didn't know our clients. So one way to know our clients is to make people register. Who likes to register? Who wants to give, you like to register? Okay, give me your email. We will send you tons of marketing stuff. I personally, but it seems I'm not alone, but there are other ways, but I personally don't like to give my email, because then I will be pestered by those like marketing managers who have nothing to do in their time but to send you stuff that you don't care about. They still don't understand that if you're not interested, it's useless. But the metrics are to send emails, so they send a lot of emails. However, what you can do is you need to provide an incentive, because who likes swag? T-shirts. Nobody likes T-shirts? Only 1, 2, 3? You don't like T-shirts otherwise? Okay, more, okay. You didn't understand my question. Who likes T-shirts? That's what I thought. Okay. So basically, you don't like to give your email, but if I give you a T-shirt, you will give me your email, right? Yeah. So we can do the same. So marketing are also understood it. That's what they are asking for your email, and they give you a T-shirt or a bag or whatever. So we can do the same. We can say, by default, you are limited in your number of calls, but if you register, then we can give you more calls, unlimited calls. That could be a good thing to do. So there is no plugin for that, so I had to write my own plugin. And here, the first thing that I'll do is, who here is a Lua developer? Nobody? Okay, I'm not a Lua developer either. So I can show you the code, because then you won't judge me. And because I'm not a Lua developer, what I did, I just copy-pasted like the code of the like auth limit stuff, and then I added my own logic here in like comments. Basically, that's not very important. Here you define the schema, so basically what parameters to the plugin are possible, which one are required. Here is important is basically you are telling what version of the plugin it is, what priority. That's something very important. I will get back to it later. It's a bit small. I will make it bigger. Like Apache APISIX applies every plugin in order. And the order is set when you create the plugin, which sometimes can create an issue, and I will show you how it creates an issue. Then I have the whole logic, blah, 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 and then I'm just saying, hey, like, I will check if you are an authenticated user. If you are an authenticated user, I let it pass, so I return from the function. Otherwise, I will continue my stuff, and probably I will limit you. So now I have this like new plugin that I created, and basically I have some configuration option, and here I'm saying like if I call you more than twice per like 1 minute, then I will send you the code 429, which basically means limits reached. And then more importantly, I will give you the message, please register. Okay, so let's run it. And now, if I call it v1, now I'm rate limited because I was not authenticated. So the second step is actually to provide a way to register that is beyond this talk. Here I will do something like very, very stupid. I will just create directly what in Apache APISIX is called the consumer, and basically it's, hey, I'm authenticated. There are multiple ways to authenticate. You have OIDC, you have keycloak, you have whatever. Here is just like a key authentication, so I will create a new user called John Doe, and you are John Doe if you pass it the API key, my key. So here I can create it. I can check that the user has been created. So consumer, John Doe, it works. And now I can call, not this one, I will go here. And I can call it passing the header. So I think I remember the API key. This can be overridden, but this is the default one, and the value is my key. And I can call it. Now I'm registered. Because I'm registered, I enjoy unlimited calls. That's pretty nice. So next step, we need to deploy our new endpoint, our new upstream, the V2, but we need to make sure that it works as expected. So who here does unit testing? Great. Who here does integration testing? Less, but okay. Who here tests in production?
Why not?
And actually, whether you do unit testing and integration testing, you will also test in production. Because who here did everything by the book and still had issues in production? It happens all the time. The reason is that the workload in production is probably very, very different from the workload in your tests. It's very hard to reproduce the same. So you need to do like this check, and I have 10 minutes, so I need to be a bit faster. So the first thing that you can do is actually do some mirroring. So you will copy the workload from production, and you will send it to the V2. You will disregard the response, but you will check that you will have the same HTTP codes. So here, this is what you can do. I will be very, very fast. Well, when I say I'm fast, I talk too much all the time. This one, tac. Then I send it a couple of requests and say, hello, Altu, Burakchik. Okay. And now we can go to actually. Oh, you don't see anything. That was my secret stuff. So basically, I have called Burakchik. I have called Altu. And I've called Nursel. And that's not that many people that I know. It's okay. And now we can go on the Grafana dashboard. So this is the default dashboard provided by default, but I've added 2 more widgets. And so basically here you can see that you can already see the calls because I always added the Prometheus plugin. And here I have no data, which means I didn't run it. And I hope that was not this one. Okay, no, that must be the V1. Okay, forget about it. It seems, for whatever reason, I don't understand why it doesn't work, but anyway. So once you've made sure that both curves are actually, now they come. Yeah, it took a bit of time. Now that afterwards you're sure that both curves look alike, now you can do some canary release. Canary release is you deploy part of the workload to the real user. It can be based on a header, it can be used on IP location, geolocation, it can be used in a lot of different ways. Here, what I'll be doing for the purpose of this demo, I will just do like every call will be as a 50-50 chance of being sent to the V1 or to the V2. So here you have the rules. Again, you can do a lot of stuff. I don't know if I started it. So here. And now I can call it like this. Oh, it's the new version already. I will just say hello because it's easier. The old version, the new version, the new version, the new version, the old version. So you can check that actually only part of your user are impacted, that they don't complain too much, or perhaps you only release it to your internal users. Now, everything is working as expected. What we can do is we can do the release. So now we officially have a V2 route. And now every time, of course, it's the V2, so it works as expected. And now, again, we have one more problem. So this is kind of release. We have multiple versions of the API, which means that we must maintain each of them. It's expensive. So we need to retire the oldest one. Here we want to retire the V1. And there is nothing in the HTTP specification that lets you know about it. So we will use the ETF draft called Deprecation Header. You have a deprecation header. You can set it to a Boolean or to a date. So I will use a Boolean because I'm lazy. Probably you should use a date in production. Then you can add an additional header that points to the correct endpoint that you want your user to use. And you can also go a step beyond and say, hey, it will be sunset. So deprecation means don't use it. Sunset means it doesn't work anymore. So you can also communicate to your users that at this date, the endpoint will be completely retired. Last step, this one. I do it with the response rewrite. I'm adding headers. So I can add just values, or I can add stuff that's read variables, so I don't need to repeat everything. And here, now if I do this one, I call the V1 endpoint, and I call it with the verbose flag. I can see here that it's deprecated and that I should use the V2. Final step, enjoy. If you did everything that I showed here, probably at this stage, when your business comes for V3, it will be very, very easy, even if you did a couple of them. So thanks for your attention. You can read my blog. You can follow me on Twitter. You can find the code for this talk on GitHub. And if I got you interested in Apache APISIX, you're welcome to come. And I have stickers.
It's for free?
It depends. If you come from Brazil, it might be paying because...
Okay.
Thanks a lot.